the twin sons of Elysia set over an uncharted planet, where Captain Jonathan Hale and his crew land in search of allies to fight the Vorek Empire. But instead of fierce warriors, they find a peaceful village of mesmerizing blue-skinned women, led by the enigmatic Queen Selene. What starts as a mission for survival soon turns into a battle of emotions, trust, and forbidden desires. Can Hale convince the Andromedans to fight for humanity, or will their sensual ways break his resolve? As the Vorek fleet approaches, Hale must make a choice: fight with force or embrace the power of connection before it's too late. In a world of peace, love, and danger, the stakes are higher than ever. Will love save them, or will it be their undoing? Stay tuned to find out. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Captain Jonathan Hale stood on the rocky shore of an unfamiliar planet, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the strange world before him. The salty spray of the alien ocean stung his face, but he barely noticed. The constellation, a sleek starship of the human fleet, gleamed nearby, perched on a cliff's edge. Its silver hull reflected the light of two suns, casting a bright glow over the landscape. They had come to this uncharted planet seeking allies in the war against the ruthless Vork Empire. Hale's mission had seemed straightforward enough: find a species willing to help in the fight for freedom, one that could provide the strength and resources humanity desperately needed. But instead of fierce warriors, he and his crew had found something entirely different. The village in front of them was small and peaceful, inhabited by humanoid females. No sign of any battle-readied army. No hint of the advanced technology he had hoped to find. Just a quiet, primitive society, unlike anything he had anticipated. Well, ain't this a kick in the head? Hale muttered to himself, running a hand through his close-cropped blonde hair. The crew had made the long journey to this distant world, and now they were faced with an unexpected dilemma. It wasn't that the sight of the villagers was disappointing. It was just confusing. There had to be more to this place than what they were seeing. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Iris Albright, stood beside him, scanning the horizon with a skeptical look in her eyes. "Bunch of dames in grass skirts," she remarked, her voice low. "Ain't exactly what I was expecting either." Hale let out a sigh, his mind racing. "Command's not going to like this," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "We came all the way out here, and this is what we find?" He turned to look at the alien village again, trying to make sense of it. The women in the village seemed peaceful enough, going about their daily activities, but it wasn't the type of civilization he had hoped to find. It was a far cry from the hardened warriors he had expected. "Guess we better go say hello," Hale said finally, trying to put his doubts aside and focus on the task at hand. He straightened his uniform and looked to his crew. "Remember, we're representatives of Earth. Let's be on our best behavior." "No promises, sir," Albright snorted, her tone playful. "Ain't every day you get to chat up a village full of space babes." Hale shot her a look, his expression stern. "Keep it professional, Iris." "I'll try," she replied with a grin, but the mischief in her eyes was undeniable. As they approached the village, Hale could see the alien women up close. They were tall, graceful, with shimmering blue skin that glowed faintly under the two suns. Their long hair flowed in shades of purple and green, and most of them wore simple woven garments that barely covered their bodies. It was a far cry from the standard clothing of other civilizations he had encountered, but it was undeniably beautiful in its own way. Still, the lack of clothing coverage was enough to make Hale shift uncomfortably. These women were like nothing he had ever seen. The group of women grew closer, and at the front of the pack was one who stood out from the rest. She wore an elaborate feathered headdress and a beaded necklace that marked her as someone of importance. She was tall and regal-looking, her presence commanding. As she drew closer, she cocked her head, her violet eyes studying the human men before her with curiosity. It was clear she had never seen people like them before. "I am Selene," she said in accented but surprisingly clear English. "Hi, priestess of the Andromedan tribe. What brings you sky travelers to our shores?" Hale took a deep breath and stepped forward, bowing slightly in the alien manner he had read about in his diplomatic training. "I am Captain Jonathan Hale of the Earthship Constellation. We come in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation between our peoples." Celine's violet eyes sparkled with amusement as she watched Hale. It was obvious she found the formal introduction amusing, but she didn't mock him. Instead, she nodded approvingly, her eyes flicking to his uniform and then back to his face. "Friendship, you say?" she asked, a hint of playful intrigue in her voice. "We will have a special ritual for welcoming honored guests." Hale's brow furrowed, unsure of what was coming next. Before he could respond, Celine turned to her companions and gave a soft command. In response, the women all dropped their simple woven skirts, lifting them to reveal their lower halves. Hale's eyes widened in shock, and his jaw nearly hit the floor. What kind of ritual was this? Why were they exposing themselves so openly? The group of women stood proudly, their bare blue skin on full display. Next to him, Lieutenant Commander Albright made a strangled choking sound, her eyes darting around uncomfortably. "What the hell?" she muttered under her breath, her face flushed with surprise. Celine, apparently unaware of the discomfort her actions had caused, stepped closer to Hale, a mischievous smile dancing on her lips. "Does this gesture of openness please you, Captain?" she asked in a playful tone. "Among the oral, bearing one's nethers is a sign of trust and hospitality." Hale quickly composed himself, trying to ignore the growing heat in his cheeks. "It's a bit different from what we're used to," he stammered, trying to maintain his composure. "But we appreciate the warm welcome. Perhaps we could discuss matters further in a more clothed setting." Celine laughed, a musical sound that made Hale's heart race. "But of course, Captain," she said, turning toward the other women. "Come, let me show you our village. We have much to discuss." As they followed Celine into the heart of the village, Hale couldn't help but marvel at the unusual beauty of the place. The buildings were organic in design, curving in on themselves, like they had grown out of the very earth. Flowers of every color imaginable bloomed around them, and the air was thick with the scent of alien produce. Despite the strange customs of the Andromedans, there was something enchanting about their world. As they moved deeper into the village, more of the Andromedan women came forward, smiling at the humans and greeting them in the same ritualistic way. Hale was doing his best to ignore the flashes of exposed skin, but it wasn't easy. It was hard to focus on diplomacy when his mind kept wandering back to the strange customs of the alien women around him. "God damn," Albright muttered under her breath, her voice tinged with both awe and discomfort. "This is like some kind of horny sci-fi nerd's wet dream come to life." "Keep it in your pants, Iris," Hale snapped, trying to focus on the mission at hand. "We're here to negotiate, not ogle the locals." But even as he said the words, he couldn't deny that there was something intoxicating about the Andromedans, their beauty, their mystery, and the unfamiliar sensuality they exuded threatened to overwhelm his thoughts. For now, though, he pushed those thoughts aside. He had a mission to complete, and the fate of his crew and humanity rested on his ability to keep his head clear. But he knew deep down that this would not be an easy task. The Andromedans had already begun to cloud his judgment in ways he never expected. As Captain Jonathan Hale and his crew ventured deeper into the heart of the Andromedan village, the air seemed to shift. The atmosphere, thick with the scent of alien flowers and the hum of unfamiliar sounds, wrapped around them like a living entity. Every building they passed seemed to pulse with life, growing from the very ground itself in flowing, organic shapes. It was like walking through a dream, a place where the laws of physics and biology didn't quite match up with what Hale knew from Earth. The villagers, all tall, lithe women with shimmering blue skin, went about their daily routines, their bare skin flashing in the sunlight as they worked. Hale tried his best to keep his gaze on the buildings, the gardens, anything other than the constant display of exposed flesh. Yet even the architecture seemed designed to keep him distracted. Curved walls woven from living vines and bright petals, bending in ways that seemed impossible, all bathed in the surreal glow of two suns hanging high in the sky. Celine, the high priestess, led them forward with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Her violet eyes sparkled with an almost mischievous energy, as though she were reveling in the shock she had caused with the village's unusual greeting ritual. Beside her fellow villagers smiled, some laughing softly while others continued to move about, seemingly oblivious to the human visitors. "Please," Celine said, gesturing for them to sit at one of the organic benches in the village's central square. "Take a moment to rest. You must be weary from your long journey." Her voice, warm and inviting, seemed to carry an undertone of something more, something deeper. Hale tried to focus on her words, but his mind kept wandering. He wasn't sure what was more strange, the way the Andromedans acted so openly, or the fact that he was finding it increasingly difficult to focus on anything else. He forced himself to sit on the soft, moss-like surface of the bench, doing his best to ignore the strange combination of nervous excitement and confusion that churned in his stomach. The rest of the crew settled down, albeit awkwardly, around the table. Lieutenant Commander Iris Albright sat beside him, her posture stiff as she tried to maintain her professionalism. Beside her, Chief Engineer Emmett Drake fidgeted with his communicator, his eyes darting around as if he couldn't quite process the surreal reality of their surroundings. "You said we would have the opportunity to discuss an alliance," Hale began, trying to steer the conversation back to the mission. "The Earth is in a dire situation, and we need help in our war against the Vork Empire. Your people's strength could make a significant difference." Celine nodded slowly, her gaze flickering briefly to the sky before she turned her attention back to Hale. "I understand your need for allies," she said softly. "But you must understand our ways as well. We do not fight battles as you do. We fight with love, with connection, and with the power of our hearts. The Andromedans believe in the strength of unity, not in the destruction of our enemies." Hale blinked, momentarily taken aback. "You fight with love?" Celine smiled. "Yes. Our rituals, our connections with one another, are sacred. They allow us to sense each other's emotions, to feel the pulse of the universe itself. It is through these connections that we find strength. We are a people of peace, Captain. Our warriors fight not with weapons, but with the power of our hearts, minds, and the energy we share." The words were strange to Hale's ears. He had expected something completely different. Advanced technologies, war strategies, weaponry. But this was something entirely foreign to him. He could see it in their faces, the Andromedans' serene expressions, their calmness, their unshakable belief in their way of life. It was as if they lived in a completely different reality from Earth's, where war and conflict were inevitable parts of life. "So, how does this all connect to the Vork Empire?" Hale asked, his tone now filled with doubt. "We're facing an enemy that doesn't know peace, a force that destroys everything in its path. Can you really stop them with love?" Celine's gaze softened, and she leaned forward, her long, flowing hair cascading over her shoulder like a silken curtain. "Love is not a weakness, Captain. It is the greatest strength of all. Our people's ability to project compassion, to reach out to others with pure intent, is a power that cannot be easily understood by those who rely only on brute force." There was a long silence as Hale processed her words. He wanted to believe her, but it was hard to reconcile this peaceful philosophy with the horrors of war he had seen. The Vork Empire was ruthless, and he knew that words alone would not stop them. But perhaps there was more to Celine's people than he initially realized. Perhaps they had abilities that went beyond what he had first imagined. "So this power you speak of, can it really help us against the Vork?" Hale asked, his voice low. Celine nodded once more. "Our empathic abilities are far more advanced than you realize. We can project our emotions, our peace, into the hearts of others. We can calm the most violent of storms, halt the most aggressive of actions simply by focusing our intentions. The Vork Empire, with their hatred and aggression, will not be able to withstand the harmony of the Andromedans." As she spoke, Hale felt something stirring inside him. It was a strange sensation, unlike anything he had felt before. It was as though Celine's words were sinking deep into his consciousness, touching something deep within him. He had always been the type to rely on logic, on tactics, on military strategy. But now, as Celine spoke, he found himself questioning everything he had ever known about power and strength. "What about your customs?" Hale asked, his voice hesitant. "The way you greet guests, the rituals you perform, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Is that all part of this connection you speak of?" Celine smiled softly, her eyes gleaming. "Yes, our rituals are sacred, Captain. They are not merely acts of greeting, but gestures of trust, openness, and connection. By revealing ourselves to others, we show that we have nothing to hide, that we trust the universe and those around us. It is an offering, an invitation for a deeper bond." Hale's mind swirled as he tried to wrap his head around everything he was hearing. The Andromedans' culture was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was so different, so strange, that he couldn't quite figure out what to make of it. But one thing was clear. Celine and her people were offering something profound, something that could potentially change the course of the war. "You said your people are about connection," Hale said slowly, his voice thoughtful. "How can we connect then? What can we do to make this alliance work?" Celine's smile deepened and she reached out to place a hand on Hale's. "You must first understand the core of our being. Only then will you truly understand how to connect with us. Our world is one of love, not war. To win our trust, you must be open to our ways. Only then will we fight with you, not for you." As she spoke, Hale felt an odd pull toward her, a connection that he couldn't explain. It was as if every word she spoke resonated deeply within him, and for a moment he considered the possibility of abandoning everything he knew to embrace this new way of life. But then reality set in. The Vork Empire was still out there, threatening to destroy everything. He couldn't afford to get distracted, no matter how tempting it was. "We'll do our best," Hale said firmly, rising from the bench. "But for now, we need to focus on the task at hand. We need your help against the Vork." Celine nodded, her smile softening. "We will help you, Captain. But first, you must help us understand you, your people, your hearts. Only then can we truly stand together." As they continued to walk deeper into the village, Hale knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary mission. The Andromedans, with their strange customs and powerful emotions, had the potential to change everything, and he couldn't afford to miss this opportunity no matter where it led. The Constellation had been docked for 2 full days now, and Captain Jonathan Hale still struggled to adjust to the unique atmosphere of Elysia. The village, though mesmerizing, had begun to blur the lines between diplomacy and temptation. It wasn't the peaceful surroundings or the awe-inspiring alien architecture that kept him awake at night. It was the constant pull of the Andromedan women, particularly Queen Celine. Her presence haunted his thoughts, and he couldn't shake the feeling that her eyes were always watching him, weighing his every action. The village's peaceful aura, once a welcome relief from the chaos of war, now seemed to weigh heavily on Hale's mind. The Andromedans, with their shimmering blue skin and tantalizing ways of connecting, were nothing like the hardened warriors he had hoped to find. Yet there was something about their culture that kept him mesmerized, like a song whose melody he couldn't forget. Lieutenant Commander Iris Albright, Hale's ever-reliable second-in-command, noticed the change in him. Over the last couple of days, she had observed his quiet moments, his distracted gazes, and the way he interacted with Celine. It wasn't like him to be so unsettled. She had seen him lead battles, negotiate peace treaties, and make the toughest decisions without flinching. But here, on Elysia, he was out of his element. "Captain," Albright said, her voice laced with concern, "we need to talk about the mission. We've been here long enough to get a sense of the Andromedans' ways. What's our next move?" Hale was sitting at the edge of the village square, his legs dangling over a woven bench made of living vines, trying to keep his gaze on the peaceful surroundings, rather than the enticing sight of Andromedan women moving about in their simple, revealing garments. His thoughts were a chaotic mix of duty and desire. "I know, Iris," he replied, his voice tight. "But I'm not sure how to proceed. They don't fight like we do. They don't see the world the way we do. I need more time to understand them, to figure out how we can make this alliance work. If they're going to help us, they have to understand the stakes. The Vorik Empire isn't going to stop until they've destroyed everything in their path. Albright's brow furrowed. You're not just trying to figure out their strategy for the war, are you? Her tone was pointed, and Hale met her gaze, realizing there was no hiding the truth. She could see right through him. I'm trying to keep my focus, Iris, he said, his voice more intense now. But it's hard. They don't follow the same rules we do. They fight with love, with connection, and He trailed off, his mind struggling to reconcile, the emotions building inside him. I don't know how to convince them to fight the way we do. The sound of footsteps interrupted the conversation. Hale looked up to see Queen Selene approaching, her presence commanding as always. The other Andromedan women, dressed in their simple, revealing clothes, moved with fluid grace around the village. Hale couldn't help but notice how Selene's headdress shimmered in the sunlight, a radiant crown that marked her as their leader. Her violet eyes locked onto his, and for a moment the entire world seemed to disappear. He was no longer Captain Hale, the leader of Earth's exploration mission. He was just a man standing before a woman whose very being seemed to speak directly to his soul. Captain Hale. Selene's voice was soft, yet somehow carried the weight of 1,000 years of wisdom. She stopped in front of him, her gaze intense. I see the burden you carry. The weight of your mission is clear in your eyes. But you must understand, war and destruction are not our ways. The Andromedans do not seek to conquer, we seek harmony. Hale swallowed, feeling the weight of her words settle on his chest. I understand, but I still don't know how we can help each other. The Vorik Empire, they don't care about harmony. They care about power. They won't hesitate to destroy everything we've built if we don't fight back. Selene stepped closer, her delicate fingers brushing his arm. You are correct, Captain. But you underestimate the strength of peace. The Vorik may have power, but power without unity is nothing. I have seen it in their eyes. They are consumed by anger, by hatred. We, the Andromedans, fight not with weapons, but with the strength of our hearts. She placed her other hand on his chest, directly over his heart. And I see that your heart is strong, Captain. Your people need you, yes. But you need to understand that the power you seek lies not in weapons, but in connection. Hale's breath caught in his throat. The sensation of her touch sent a ripple through his body, making his thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. He forced himself to focus. You're asking me to abandon everything I know. I'm not sure I can do that. Selene's lips curled into a soft smile. You don't have to abandon anything. You simply have to see beyond what you've been taught. I am not asking you to forsake your people, Captain. I am asking you to join us in something greater than war. Together, we can create a future that is built on understanding and love, not bloodshed. For a moment, Hale stood there, speechless, the pull of her words wrapping around him like a web. She was right. There was something undeniably powerful about her presence, her calm conviction. It was as though she held the answers to all the questions he had ever asked. But the truth was, he wasn't sure if he was ready to embrace it. The weight of his mission, the lives of his crew, the fate of Earth, all of it depended on him making the right choice. Captain? Selene's voice broke through his thoughts. She was close now, so close that he could feel the heat of her body radiating against his. Her fingers traced a gentle line down his arm. You have nothing to fear. Come with me. Let me show you how our way of life can help you. I promise you, you will understand soon enough. Hale hesitated. Part of him knew this was a moment of temptation, a moment that could cloud his judgment. But another part of him, the part that longed for peace, for something different, was drawn to her words. He could feel his resolve beginning to waver, his desire to protect his people clashing with his growing curiosity about the Andromedans. I can't, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Not yet. There's too much at stake. Selene's gaze softened, and she took a step back, understanding flickering in her eyes. I understand, Captain. But know this. The power you seek is here within you and within us. All you need to do is open your heart to it. As Celine turned and walked away, Hale stood there, rooted to the spot, his mind reeling. What she had said, how she had touched him. It was all too much to process. He knew what he needed to do. The Vorak Empire was still a threat, and he had to focus on the mission. But the Andromedans had something else. Something he couldn't quite understand but knew he needed to explore further. God help me, Hale muttered under his breath, his heart pounding as he watched Celine disappear into the village. He knew he had made a promise to his crew, but in his gut he sensed that his journey with the Andromedans was far from over. And as he walked back toward the constellation, Hale couldn't help but wonder just how much his mission had changed in the last few days, and how much it would change in the days to come. The night on Elysia had fallen quietly, with the twin suns slipping below the horizon, casting the village in soft, shimmering twilight. Captain Jonathan Hale stood at the window of his quarters aboard the Constellation, gazing out at the alien world below. The tranquil beauty of Elysia was in stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside him. His mind was a battlefield, torn between the duty he had to his people and the magnetic pull of the Andromedans, their culture, their way of life, and most of all, their queen, Celine. He had never expected a mission like this. When they first set out, Hale had been prepared for battles, weapons, and fierce warriors. Instead, he had found a planet filled with peace, sensuality, and connection. The Andromedans fought in a way that was so alien to him, yet so undeniable in its power. And through it all, Celine had been a constant presence, her gaze never far from his, her touch always lingering even when she wasn't near. Hale's communicator beeped, interrupting his thoughts. He glanced down at the screen, seeing the familiar face of Lieutenant Commander Iris Albright. Her expression was serious, as always, but there was an urgency in her eyes that made Hale's stomach tighten. Captain, Iris began, her voice clipped. We've got a situation. Hale immediately snapped to attention, his previous distractions pushed aside. What's going on, Iris? The Vorak Empire, she replied, her tone hardening with the gravity of the situation. We've just received word that their fleet has entered the system. They're closing in on Elysia. Hale's heart sank, the weight of the news settling on him like a heavy stone. The Vorak Empire. His worst fear had come true. They had been hoping to gain the Andromedans' trust, to secure their aid before the Vorak arrived, but it seemed the enemy had found them first. The peace they had so carefully cultivated was now in jeopardy. How long do we have? Hale asked, his mind already racing through the possibilities. Not long, Iris said. They'll be here in a matter of hours. We need to act quickly. Hale stood for a moment, frozen in thought. The mission was no longer about diplomacy. The Vorak were a relentless force, and if Elysia fell, it would be catastrophic not just for the Andromedans, but for the entire galaxy. He had come here to find allies, to forge peace. But now it seemed like there was no time left for that. The Vorak would stop at nothing to take what they wanted. Understood, Hale replied, his voice firm. Prepare the crew. We need to take the fight to them. I'll get the team ready. Iris responded before the line went silent. Hale turned back toward the window, his eyes scanning the peaceful village below. He had promised Celine that he would protect her people, that he would help them defend their world. But could he do it? Could he fight the Vorak and still honor the connection he had begun to form with the Andromedans? His loyalty to his crew and his mission to save Earth clashed with his growing feelings for Celine. He couldn't ignore the way she had made him feel, the connection that had deepened between them over the past few days. But the reality was clear. The war with the Vorak had to come first. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Hale straightened, trying to shake off the weight of the decision that loomed over him. He opened the door to find Queen Celine standing there, her presence as commanding as ever. Her violet eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, it was as if time itself had stopped. You're leaving, she said softly, her voice carrying a trace of sadness that Hale hadn't expected. I can feel it. Hale nodded, the words catching in his throat. The Vorek are coming. I have to help defend your people. We don't have much time. Celine stepped forward, her graceful movements hypnotic. She stood before him, close, enough for him to feel the warmth of her body, yet far enough away that he could still maintain some distance. She lifted a hand and placed it gently on his chest, right above his heart. I knew this moment would come, she said quietly. I knew you would have to choose, but that doesn't make it any easier. Hale's breath caught in his throat. I wish it were different. I want to be with you. I've never felt anything like this before. But my people, they need me. And so do mine, Celine replied, her voice thick with emotion. But, Jonathan, don't you see? The very thing you've been fighting for, this war, this endless cycle of destruction, is exactly what we want to avoid. The Vorek are driven by anger, by violence. If you fight them in their way, you'll only become like them. You will lose everything we've built here, the peace, the trust, the love. Hale closed his eyes, his heart racing. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. He had never been one to back down from a fight, but the calm, the peace that Celine offered him seemed so much more tempting. Yet the reality of the war and the destruction the Vorek had left in their wake pulled him back. I'm not sure I can do this alone, Hale said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not sure I can make the right choice. Celine's hand slid from his chest and she took a step back, her eyes filled with understanding. You're not alone, Jonathan. You have the strength to make this decision. You have always had it. The sound of a sudden explosion echoed from the direction of the constellation, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Hale's head snapped toward the sound, his instincts kicking in. The Vorek had arrived. We don't have time, Hale said urgently. I have to go. Celine stepped forward one last time, her gaze fierce. Then go. Fight for your people, Captain Hale. But know this. No matter what happens, the Andromedans are with you. You are not alone. With a final look, Hale turned and ran for the door. He didn't look back as he hurried toward the constellation. The Vorek Empire was here and there was no more time for doubt. He had made his choice. He had to protect Earth, protect his crew, and protect the people who had placed their trust in him. As Hale boarded the ship and made his way to the bridge, his heart still ached with the knowledge of what he had left behind. But he knew one thing for certain: the battle ahead would change everything. And no matter the outcome, he would carry a piece of Elysia and of Celine with him forever. Back on the surface, Celine stood alone, watching as the constellation ascended into the sky. A sense of peace washed over her despite the chaos brewing around them. She had known Jonathan Hale would choose his people, but she also knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. In the end, love and peace would find a way, even amidst the chaos of war. As the night deepened and the twin suns faded from view, Celine whispered to the stars, "May the universe guide him. May it guide us all."